All right, well, the third time hopefully is a charm. I'm down to cell phone video. Hopefully connection on my cell is better than on my desktop. Again, if you're joining, please let me know in here. Hopefully you can. If not, we might have to just do it another day, but I hope it will work now. Again, I'm Lydia Taylor. I am a licensed judge and technical delegate with Confederation for Work in Equitation. The new U.S. Work in Equitation rulebook out that it goes in effect 2020. So there's a month to learn new rules. Read the book a few times over. I will cover the changes that impact the riders directly. But there's a lot of exciting stuff happening in this book. I encourage you to be an active participant in the way this rule book is shaping up. There is a rule change proposal form that's available online on Confederation website. You don't have to fill it out in a hard copy. You can actually, there's an online link. If you don't like something and you think it can be done better, whatever that is, you can send your proposal in by September 1st, and then the changes you propose will be considered for the following competition year. Taryn, can you hear me? All right, we'll see how it works. So hopefully it's working. So keep in mind that the work kind of meaningless one. For every person that says that some change on their new rule is perfect, there's a person that thinks that change is too hard, and one more person thinks that makes things too easy. So there's always somebody unhappy in the end. What I try to do, because I have my own strong opinions as well, thank you, Taryn, but I like to look at things in the perspective. My point of view is just of the one person. What point of view would somebody with a different background, with a different area of the country would think? Lately, there was a lot of talk how U.S. rulebook or U.S. work in equitation deviates from Portuguese and how things here are not done as well as in Portugal. Well, reality is they cannot be done the same way. Portugal is a small, well, relatively speaking, but very small country with well-established and very homogeneous equestrian tradition. It is impossible to compare to United States, where you can have a trail rider that never had a formal lesson in their life, classical discipline riders, dressage and eventers, working ranch hands, stock horse sports. There's so much diversity. There's so much diversity in backgrounds. There's also no easy access to a qualified instructor down the road. There's no, very hard to find easy access to well-schooled horses. So I really don't think it's realistic to expect all U.S. riders right off the bat to be held to the standards of countries that originated the sport of work in equitation: Portugal, Spain, and France. That's why the rulebook exists. That's why the levels exist, to develop our own riders that they can perform on the same level. All right, so now to the actual rule changes. There's a handy chart in front that covers them all. I'm going to go in the order that they appear in the revision summary and in the rule book itself. All right, so I already mentioned that the deadline for rule change proposal is September 1st, which gives the Rules Committee 2 months. Is it 2 months? 2 months, yes, to work on the changes, because they usually released on beginning of November, and go in effect December 1st. As I mentioned, Rules Committee has members from both associations. Next big change in this rule book, that there's no longer children divisions in the form that it was, limited to children 8 to 12 years old, and it had its own dressage test, and it had its own requirements for ease of handling. But now here, children can still compete. There is an expanded youth range ages from ages 7 to 17. And within that, show organizers are free to add a children's division from 7 to 11. And youth riders can compete at any level except for masters. So there's no longer a children's dressage test. Young riders would just have to ride intro, novice, and whatever other level they will. There is a clarification that there is no cattle trial for the intro level, which is rather logical since we don't have speed, they don't canter, and it's pretty hard to sort cattle in trot only. And there is probably a welcome addition for many, a rising trot still allowed at level 3, which is novice B. Next, there are several changes, and they're actually mostly clarifications in the tech and attire section. Curb straps are specifically addressed. There must be minimum of half an inch wide, and they must lay flat on the horse's chin. There is a clarification on optional attire. I know that came up in competitions before. So the required attire is the pants, breeches, or riding skirt, appropriate footwear, long or short sleeve shirt, hat or helmet. And it said that optional attire was allowed, chaps, vests, gloves, scarves, but it was unclear whether the rider had to maintain the attire throughout all phases of competition. So this rule book states that you do not have to have the same optional attire. So for example, if you wore your chaps in dressage, you may remove them for speed. Or if you wore your gloves for dressage, you don't need to wear them for ease of handling. Next, spurs are addressed. We already knew that they allowed, now it's explicitly stated in the rule book that spurs may be worn at every level. Moving on, an exciting development, outside assistance. There's a change. Now, introductory level riders, level 1, are allowed to have a reader, a caller, for the ease of handling test. The reader may only mention the number of the obstacle and the name of it, must be stationed outside of competition arena, not near the in-gate and not near the judge. But I know the knee-jerk reaction will be, oh, everybody must memorize their test, which would be great, but remember, the sport is so new. We attract a lot of riders that have never had to memorize a course. Hi, Michael. So I think at intro level, this is a reasonable allowance, particularly for the riders just entering the sport to have a caller for intro level. The next exciting development is on use of the reins. Now for intro through all intermediate levels, you may switch from one-handed to two hands if you need to correct the horse, and you may stay two-handed. There's not a separate penalty for it. However, remember, it doesn't mean that you can switch from right hand to left hand. That's still a disqualification. So if you're riding one-handed, that one, whatever designated hand you use, must be used throughout the trial. Tarrant mentioned that spurs also optional, so therefore you don't have to use them in every trial. You can wear them for dressage, but you don't have to use them on ease of handling. Thank you for clarification, Tarrant. Okay, so back to rein hands. So you may start with one hand, you can make a correction how long you need two-handed, and if you really need assistance of two hands, you may finish a test with two hands on the reins. It will be up to the judge, depending what's going on in the ring in front of them. They might be a lower rider mark if that happens. The level, of course, 6 and 7, they only ridden one-handed and they may not switch hands, except for briefly adjust the reins, and it's a momentary action. Another I think a good development that now the riders through intermediate level allowed to stroke the horse or touch the horse briefly in front of the rein hand, little good boy, good girl pat. For high level, for advanced and masters, each occurrence will incur a penalty. It's 5 points on dressage and ease of handling, 5 seconds on speed, and the third touch in front of the rein hand will be disqualification still. Salute was extensively addressed, and again, I actually seen the issues. It seems like not a big deal, but there have been issues during the competition. So, new definition of a salute: the rider may nod and or drop the hand. So you don't have to do both. You can just drop the hand or just nod. You may drop either your rein hand or working hand, so it would not be disqualification if you briefly switch reins and hands to salute. Male riders, if they're not wearing a safety helmet, may remove their head, but it's not required. So that's a clarification there. Another change that I know many people are excited about is soft use of voice is now allowed, and it says occasional use of voice. So clucking every trot or canter stride is still not a good thing. Excessive use of voice will be penalized in the rider mark. Here, I'm conflicted on that, but I can understand the rule change, because first of all, as long as you're not in front of the rider, we always had ability to just under the breath put a good boy in there, so that wasn't a big deal. I come from a school of thought where riding was required to be quiet, though I talk to my horse a lot, so I'm on board with this change. It's a good change, particularly for new horses, new riders, to keep the whole atmosphere rather positive. All right, moving on. A little bit of administrative change, but I wanted to mention it, that there are no qualifying scores required for any B or A rated competition. So just as a rider, if you're trying to enter a show that's not a regional show, not a national show, but just a regular A or B show, and they tell you that you need to qualify, this is not true. So that's in the rule book. Just keep that in mind. Another administrative change, but important for riders to know, now we have official protest forms that will be available at any rated show. A technical delegate must have some on hand. So if you have issue with, course condition, footing, if you question eligibility of a rider, if you think there's error in scores or timing, you have the form to fill out, needs to have a $75 deposit, and there are time limits for each type of correction that you're asking for, protest. For example, if you protest somebody's eligibility, it has to be at least an hour before the start of the competition, so the protest committee has time to verify. Or if you think there's a scoring mistakes, you have an hour after the scores are posted to bring it up to the attention of the show management. Or rather, technical delegate is the one who will accept those forms. Further, negative score was defined. Negative score now is 4.5 and lower. So when you see in the rule book that, let's say, some infraction will cause, let's say, knocking down a barrel during a drum competition will result in negative score. So negative score starts at 4.5 and goes down. Now, dressage. Not many changes in the rules other than in the master's score sheet, the rider score changed to match Huawei description, which is rather logical. There's a huge change in novice A dressage test, and that's been causing a big stir. Let's talk about it. First of all, I wanted to mention that that's another thankless job of the test designer, test writer. Carmen Franco wrote the test that we have now. If you don't remember the original test, this set we have right now is such an amazing step forward in improving them. We used to go from walk, trot, intro test, and the next test up had 15-meter canter circles. So there wasn't a whole lot progression there. I find all of the tests, even the original Novice A, very flowing, very rider and horse friendly. But I felt that Novice A needed a little more challenge in a trot work to reflect the difficulty and ease of handling. So I submitted a proposal to change the shallow loops to full 3-loop serpentine across the whole arena, and to add 15-meter trot circles before the canter. The 15-meter circles were accepted, so now we have 15-meter circle before canter at A. Used to be you had to pick up canter within first quarter of the 20-meter circle, but now you have the whole 15-meter trot circle to prepare your canter depart, then you depart at the letter. And I'm sure other people propose something similar to. I have no way of knowing who else proposed similar changes. The way the substituted shallow loops look right now from the drawing from Confederation is closer to 5-loop serpentine. The loops look even, except starting in the corners. You ride the corner, then 3 middle loops you'll ride as a serpentine and ride it out deep into the corner. This is a controversial one because dressage people say it's too difficult at this level, to which I have to point out that double slalom is required to be trotted starting at intro level. And double slalom parameters are much, much smaller than the full dressage court. Also, the point that a lot of classical dressage people make that it's unreasonable to require a level of collection required to do small turns in this test. And I agree with this, but you don't have to be highly collected in the traditional dressage sense with a fully powered trot to do this. If we stick to competition dressage principles, then we end up with a huge ground covering trots, which are great, but they're not what's required in the working sport. It's possible to negotiate tight turns with short active steps that not necessarily lowering hunches a lot and creating a lot of connection, but the horse can still be agile and handy. So I'm okay with the 5-loop version, but I'm not sure if Rules Committee is still working on this one. That's why we have a month before rules go into effect. I don't know if there'll be one more clarification. They still may go to 3-loop serpentines, I suppose, from A to C and C to A, but whatever it happens, we just go with it. And if you feel strongly about this change, there is a rule change submission form. The more people submit it, the more weight it gets with the Rules Committee. All right, that's our exciting Novice A. Now, ease of handling. There's quite a few changes in there too, and I think people were so focused on this Novice A test that a lot of them maybe went unnoticed. Yes, Michael, I agree. It's not 5-loop with even loops. I think actually the last drawing that Kelly did, the way I see it, the distance between the straight lines is the same, but the beginning and the end aren't half voltes. They going deep in the corner, then you ride your 3 half voltes and you ride out deep in the corner from what I see. But again, we'll wait for the final word on that. I don't know if that's final or not. All right, so ease of handling. We no longer have a requirement for ease of handling or speed course arena to be flat because we use a lot of outdoor courses, so that's kind of common sense addition. Now, on our beloved obstacle chart, there are a lot of changes. In advanced level, the number of required obstacles went up to 12. That's not a big deal. In the livestock pen, the trot option in novice level has been removed. So now the livestock pen is walk and intro in both novice tests. Then an exciting change, which I think I submitted that one too, and I know many people did too. In novice B, double slalom is now a trot movement, which is plenty difficult to execute correctly. We're still cantering at novice B, the figure eight, the drums, the switch cup. So there's definite increase in difficulty from novice A to novice B, but not quite overwhelming as trying to do repeated changes of lead through trot within 20 feet on double slalom. So I'm excited about this one. I think we will see a lot more people moving up to novice B and not skipping it as it's been case in the past. Side pass rail. The trot option has been removed in novice level, and the canter option has been removed in intermediate level. So now we have walk only all the way through advanced and masters is the only levels that has a edit canter option. Now the non-Huawei obstacles, the move the sag, drag item, and varied footing, now is allowed to be included in US competition at advanced and masters level. That was not the case before. So that's our obstacle chart. Now there's few clarifications on course design. They must be at least 30 feet from entry-exit gate to first and last obstacle, but that's 30 feet not in a straight line, but 30 feet on intended line of travel. That's mostly note for course designers. There's a slight change in the dropped item policy. So at intro level, the dropped item would be handed to the rider so they can complete the obstacle. Now the intro rider has an option to simply take a 0 and move on and not complete that particular obstacle. Much more exciting change now that if novice level and above, if you decide to dismount a novice and intermediate up, you must dismount and fix the obstacle or pick up the item. You are not judged on your dismount and remount. You don't have to have an item in any particular hand. So if you're right-handed, you drop the jug, you may get off, pick it up in your left hand, mount. As long as you put the item in the correct hand before you resume your course, you're fine. So it'll be a lot less awkward mounting, particularly with the Garocha too. So you can. Yes, Michael. So yes. So we have advanced and masters non-Huawei obstacles are allowed. Yes, that's how I'm reading the rulebook exactly. They're not required to be included, but they're allowed to be included. And I think that's mostly for show organizer benefit if they have limited access to obstacles. I mean, yes, knee-jerk reaction, we must stick with Huawei, but I don't know if adding more obstacles is necessarily a bad thing, particularly since those obstacles, I think, highly original. I don't see a whole lot of them around here. So if it allows course designers to put a full show, and I'm okay with that. But again, if somebody does not like it, then there's a remedy for that. Dropped items. Well, of course, my phone's about to die. Course error clarification. So if you committed a course error, you went back to fix it, you do not have to redo the whole obstacle if you can correct the course error without it. For example, you rode a side pass pole and you forgot to exit through the flags. If you come back to fix it, you do not have to side pass again. You can simply circle back and exit through the cones. Let's see. Speed has been clarified. Then speed course may have different additional obstacles or different obstacles. and that the course walk is allowed, and the riders may walk the new course, which is rather logical. There was a clarification for novice level speed. Since 3 refusal and ease of handling would get a 0, and if you get more than a certain amount, then you cannot ride speed. So what do we do in speed? So it's been addressed in this edition. 3 refusals during a speed round will result at 30-second penalty. Slight changes in cow trial. The selected cow crossing back over the foul line is no longer a 10-second penalty, because this one is kind of self-punishing, time taken, because you have to go back and get the cow out. Now in Appendix B, there are some changes to the obstacles. In the livestock pen, the entry size has been changed. It used to be just 5 feet, now it can be 5 up to 8 feet. In the jug obstacles, it can no longer be marked with flags as entry and exit. Switch cup is clarified that upon completion of this obstacle, you must move forward to ride out of it. And I know this one was controversial last year when on obstacles with cups or bells, the rider were to be penalized for leaning out of the saddle. This has been removed, so there's no longer any verbiage for the rider leaning out of the saddle to reach the bell or the cup, and that would be for a bell with a L rein-back, for L rein-back with a cup, and for rounding up of obstacles. The drum's been clarified that unless the course map states so, the default is to execute it to the right. Oh, good, Linda. So the map, if the map does not have a direction specified, you go right on the drums. Jump, the height's been changed from level 4 to 7 to 22 inches. The varied footing has been amended. It does not have to be natural. It could be a sheet of plywood or a rubber mat, and the minimum size been diminished to 4x8, which is conveniently a sheet of plywood. I think this is most, there are more administrative changes. There's a massive change in addition for team scoring, both for cow trial and the regular trials. There are some changes that the scribe's going to be very excited. The new ease of handling score sheet's been formatted. There's a lot more space for comments now, and there's a box for obstacle total. So little things, but they make us people happy. So this is the major changes. You still, of course, need to go back and read your book. Make sure you know them. We'll keep an eye out to see if the Rules Committee upholds that the latest chart on the Novice A serpentine. Do I have any questions? And this session will be available once it's recorded. So it will be available on my page. Well, thank you for tuning in. I hope to see you in this competition year. Happy riding.